All right, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Practice. I'm Dr. Bill Moss, and I'm with.
I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
And today we're going to dive into the topic regarding the voices in our head and its relationship to our negative ego. And when we were picking this topic, the first thing that went through my mind was we could probably talk about this, just like the weekly theme of the voices in our head each week.
Yeah.
And this could be this could be the episode of the show because whether we're working with clients, chiropractically or healing, or going through our own journey, this is like a big thing that's going on for all of us. And this isn't about counseling per se, but it's really helpful to understand what's going on inside the mind, what the voices mean, and like how we can navigate through them. The chatter, the positive talk versus the negative self-talk that really keeps us from achieving full healing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about which topic to do tonight too, and there's kind of a funness with this one, the voices in our head, and it also seems like a very taboo topic where I think it's something that everybody can relate to, but people
Yeah.
don't necessarily always want to admit of like the battle with the different voices or aspects within them.
Mm.
That really takes place on a daily basis for most people, maybe even more frequent than that, maybe like an hourly basis or more often.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and you can tell I maybe just I'm speaking for myself. Whenever we're talking about this tonight, I'm just speaking for myself if I bring some. But
Yeah.
when when we're repeating something over and over again, I don't think it gets our attention the first time. It's when it becomes persistent that oftentimes we'll take a inventory of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to do. Like my wife and I were, I think, having a conversation that was very much about this. And sometimes just the matter of us talking about this, we're moving energy surrounding it to be
Yeah.
like, one, it's okay, it happens. Two, it's
Yeah.
it's always going on to some degree. Because she was just telling me something earlier today about something she was dealing with, and by just talking about it, you kind of like diffuse the situation in yourself. You're like, hey, I'm just working through this, and this is going on for me. And that's really helpful because
Yeah.
the voice does help move energy, and if things just sit around in thought form, they don't have a place to go. I think that's why
Yeah.
this is such a good topic to discuss. It's like, well, not just what are the voices in our head, but like, what do you do with them? Like, what are some
Yeah.
strategies? So I
Yeah.
think we're going to discover that as we go in this episode as well.
I totally agree. And I think that the more like sensitive somebody is,
Yeah.
probably the more this is something that comes up for them. Whether
Yeah.
we talk about sensitive in terms of energy or sensitive in terms of your own self-awareness,
Hmm.
the more that you're increasing those things, the more this is probably going to pop up for you. Because it's kind of easy, like when I used to drink alcohol, like you can have some drinks and everything kind of goes quiet, or people
Yeah.
might smoke pot and then everything kind of goes quiet,
Yeah.
or these different ways people check out. But the more you
Mhm.
do the opposite of checking out, the more you have to face these voices in your head for what they are.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I think I've also had the opposite experience back in the day with
Mhm.
substances. Is don't use any of them for years, but I remember having like two experiences. One, sometimes your mind would just start racing. Like then it's almost like it would focalize on
Mm,
the negative output, and or if you suppressed it enough, it would come back with a vengeance the next day. So
yeah,
it's like when we don't deal with the mind and we don't deal with the voices that are in our head, for better or for worse, they sometimes just really come back with a vengeance. And I know I
yeah,
experience this with things I that are good for me too, like not the negative ego, like put that down, stop doing that, whatever. But
yeah,
sometimes it's like you need to step up and do this thing, and it just keeps showing up and showing up and showing up. And
yeah,
I think we sometimes interpret that push is a voice in our head,
mhm,
guidance or whatnot. But we've all felt that like, tap on the back to like take
yeah,
action. And I
yeah,
know for myself, that's kind of feels like a voice in my head.
yeah.
Um, but often, for me, I think it oftentimes means do something, do something about
Yeah.
it, take some action, get it out of this thought state and do something with what's going on.
That's such a beautiful perspective. And yeah, that thought state, that state of things just aren't fully physically manifested yet,
Yeah.
and how that is, but there's still a reality to it. There's still like it's still affecting us in a major way.
Yeah. And what for your clients, what are some like thought patterns or the voices that you that happen for them that they report to you? Like what are some of the common themes that you see when you're working with people that um call it the negative ego, call it
Yeah.
maybe, if we want to put a label on it, or just the voice that is behind a lot of healing that you
Yeah.
see with some of the people you work with.
Yeah, well, it's funny we're having this conversation right now because I just had an energy client right at the end of the day, um, and this person had kind of not lost their mind, but it was like they lost control of their mind. This is somebody who's
Mm,
normally very like in control of their mind, and was really caught up in and like if you could say the voices in their head, like just lost that proper orientation and proper balance, if you will.
mm,
And so
mhm.
so I got to help, like, navigate that person back to their center point so that they're the one fully in control and they're not, just listening to every aspect of their negative ego.
Mhm.
Because those, sorry, I feel like I'm veering off here a little bit, but I just wanna go down this, path
Let's do it.
where yeah, it's like the voices in our head. I mean, maybe that voice is an angel. Maybe it's one of
Mhm.
your spirit guides. Maybe
Yep.
it's your negative ego. Like, what is that voice in your head?
Mhm.
And this is something that I work with all the time, like as within my own being. It's like, okay, what is it? What is going on? What am I? What is that voice? Does it feel good? Does it feel good in my heart and my soul?
Yeah.
Does it is it something that brings peace and calm and light to me? Or is it
Mhm.
something that makes me irritated and kind of makes me feel frustrated or aggressive in
Mhm.
some way? And
Mhm.
then that, like how I'm feeling in response to that voice really helps me to discern what is it. Because if
Yeah.
it's like if it's an angel or spirit guide, that you're gonna feel more peaceful. You're gonna
Mhm.
feel like you're gonna have
Mhm.
clarity. If it's your negative ego or some unresolved trauma, you're gonna have a more visceral response geared towards the negative, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that fun? That's a great point. Like, I think that's a for anybody who's, just kind of assessing their own, like, what are the voices? But like, then we end up having these feelings in the body. And
Yeah,
I know, like you said, okay, if I'm experiencing this guidance, this wisdom, whether coming from spirit guides or angels or what not, you feel it in a different way, right?
yeah,
And you didn't know that at first. And there's a difference between this has been like one of the big ones for myself is
yeah,
there's a difference between like anxiety in the sense of like um lack of alignment, I guess I want to call it,
yeah.
versus like the butterflies or the excitement, right?
Yes, yes.
They're very close because a
Yeah,
lot of things that push us to grow, there's like this apprehension and butterflies that are for our better, greater good that aren't
yeah,
the same as that like resistance and lack of alignment that can come with anxiety.
yeah.
If you've been listening to the show, we kind of started off with our personal stories. Like I really dealt with a lot of anxiety
Mm,
initially years ago, 20 plus years ago, to the point of hospitalization. So, there's a similar nature to both sides of that sensation, but they're still different and very subtle.
yeah, and
Because it's not just about feeling good all the time. Like that's,
yeah,
I know as an initiate and with my wife that we talk about this all the time. It's like
mm,
seeking a life of a comfort is like kind of being an addict.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And oftentimes those voices, like, they'll try to steer us towards comfort and
Mhm.
or doing
Yeah.
what's easy, doing what's easy. Don't take that risk. It'll never work out. That don't ask that person on a date. Don't do that business move. Don't go whatever. It's like all
Yeah.
the list of negative things just grows there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's exactly what you are meant to do.
Yeah.
And
Oh my god. And that's like you have most people aren't aware of that, right? That's not like
Yeah.
common. It's like, well, how do you feel about this? Oh, I don't want to do it. But that's like
Yeah.
that's whenever people talk about the end of their life, it's always statements that are, I wish I would have just taken more risk. I wish I would have
Yes. Yeah.
gotten outside of my comfort zone. I wish I would have taken, asked the person out. I wish I would have left the job. I wish I would have spent more time with family, and it's meanwhile, the reason we don't is because the voices keep coming up telling us
Yeah.
that it can't be better. And that's now, I mean, this isn't, I'm not never 100% with this, but that is definitely becoming more in my awareness that when
Yeah.
that chatter starts showing up, I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
there's growth here. Um, but
Absolutely.
often, a lot of times we get so emotional before we can like sit back and witness what's going on in the voices in our head and just be like, I'm curious. That's curious that I'm continuously having thoughts surrounding this.
Yeah.
And then they start to show up. So I know a practice for me, and maybe you can speak to this too, is whenever I have an idea and it feels that way, I start to almost m- um, like play with it in a
Mm.
non-material way. And what I mean by that is like if I come up with an idea and I think maybe I want to pursue it, I start talking about it in subtle ways to see if doors start kind of like opening
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
along the way. Just to see how the world responds, how people respond. It's almost become my playground. But if I'm not cognizant of stepping back and looking at it, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna get caught in emotions and probably not take action on it. So
Oh, I love how you do that. I don't do it quite that way, but
okay.
I can imagine how well that works. As far as being able to playfully test it. But for
Hmm.
me, it's more of like an internal. It's very much when those voices are going on. I'm just continually checking with how I feel,
Mm,
like, so it's like I'm really going through this internal process of, okay, how do I feel, and like really getting clarity of how I feel in my body about whatever is
mm,
going on.
yeah,
And then it's like, for me, it kind of like solidifies, like, okay, that's something that I want to follow, and then
yeah,
I'll take action. But I
yeah.
really like what you're describing as far as like playing it and testing with it first. That sounds really really fun.
You know, I don't. So I heard this one time I had a mentor, and he was like, I was talking about how I felt like I was a good public speaker, but I didn't prepare in the way that people typically did. And he's like, well, you have a process. You have
Mm.
one. Like you can't be a good public speaker if you don't have a process. And then I started to be like, well, I have to have one, right? Like there's got to
Yeah.
exist. Um, and I realized, kind of in the same way that this is what I like to do. And I think sometimes
Mm.
people, that's how I like to play with the voices in my head. I like
Yes.
to calmly entertain them into the world in a way that's very subtle to see if it works.
Mm.
Um, and I think I had that process for a while, but I didn't recognize, or I wasn't
Mm.
aware of it. And whenever I have something new like this happened with employees a couple years ago. Like I had somebody, Caitlin, who now works for me, and she does some healing work, and she's been with me 3 years. She asked if I had a position. I was like, I don't have a
Yeah.
position. But then for a month, I told her I'd text her, and I was like, I think you're overqualified.
Mm.
And I didn't text her back for like a whole month. And she was like, what is this guy doing? And I realized what I was doing is I started to kind of see if this was a good decision and how that would
Yeah.
show up. And talk about it a little bit. And then finally, a part-time employee after 2 weeks was like, hey, I'm leaving. And I was like, I need the stability. That's what this is. And I took it as the
Mm.
opening that I should hire this person because I was like just testing it with my
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
because it was rattling in my mind. And I was like, what would that look like? And I started to talk about it a little bit. So I know for me, this podcast is probably like the greatest invention for us to like have a forum to for
Yeah.
me to like explore ideas and healing. And I think that's something we've even noticed for ourselves. Like it gets some of the thoughts as a practitioner and
Yes.
thoughts as working with clients and getting it out and seeing like, are you seeing the same things I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
oftentimes we are, and then it allows us to do something with it.
Yeah. And even in the world of, like with the world of chiropractic, there's different chiropractic techniques, and there's different kind
Yeah.
of methods of thinking, if you will. Like
Yeah.
different chiropractic techniques, this is how you assess. This is kind of how you think about cases
Mm,
often. And it's very common that maybe you share with colleagues about, I have this case, maybe this challenge, this person's
yeah.
suffering with X or Y or Z, and you can kind of bounce ideas off each other. With the energy healing, it's it tends not to be as external. I think it's like people tend to have more of their internal process of how they perceive energy, which
Yeah.
is really unique because it's not spoken about so much. So
Yeah.
it's,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can have a different experience than I'm having, and we might not know it, even though you and I are, like super best friends, and we don't
Yeah.
always we've never had this conversation before,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though we've had millions of conversations.
Yeah. I think now you bring up a good point in the sense that I also believe that people are, because they're more sensitive, there's more things going on in people's head. We always think of
Yeah.
it's like technology, information, it's overstimulating everybody. But part of that is we're probably sensing more, right? So we're taking in more. And then people don't know what to do with that at all. And then it tends to lead into angst. And
Yeah.
I don't know, this is funny that we're having this conversation because I think back in the day, we always thought, oh, if you could see or understand energy, you did it in a way that was very outside the understanding of an everyday individual. But we each kind of
Yeah.
perceive things differently. And I like to describe, I can like see an angst in people's field where they're kind of like stuck in a pattern, whether it be mental. Usually the mind ones are the most obvious. There's like a
Yeah.
um, Hugh, but people are more sensitive. So and if we don't have these outlets to kind of to ground it, to understand of it and make sense of it, I think it drives people a little bit crazy. Um, and then and we have to discern between what's the inner voice that's like guiding us towards us knowing ourselves to a greater degree, and what's the one that's just like messing with us
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you know knock us
And
off our path.
yeah, and maybe you're somebody who is like, okay, I don't know if I believe in angels or negative ego or that type of thing. But you've had, regardless of whether or not you believe in that, you've had this experience of where you've been your highest self, where you've not been your higher self, where you've
Yeah.
been that brightest, best version of yourself, and when you've kind of fallen short.
Hmm.
We can think about it in that perspective too, and it's like, well, which voice is going to help you step into that highest version of yourself and potential, and which one is going to um, lead you into the gutter, if you will.
Hmm.
And it takes huge discernment, and it really takes huge practice. Like, because if you're not, I remember talking with a client, and oftentimes with one of the things we really encourage people to do with the mystery school work is really know yourself. You're your best leader, your best teacher, your best guide.
Hmm.
You're the one who knows yourself the best. uh,
Yeah.
but if you're not meditating, if you're not taking the time to like get quiet or to get to know and connect with yourself, chances are your guidance isn't going to be so good.
Right.
So it's like, if you're not taking that time to actually go within and be present with what you're fully experiencing, you're setting yourself up for a much greater chance of failure,
Yeah.
of like getting taken off track by your negative ego or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best tool for this, like from a spiritual
Yeah,
practice. If we had to tie something like to improve in that, and it's definitely that. It's not adding more things, right? It's not
yeah,
adding more activities that are going to help you understand what's going
yeah,
on. And I do believe a lot of people want to avoid meditation because they don't actually they don't want to take inventory about what's going on. And I feel like that's the
yeah,
best, that's the best thing is like if you have to sit in a room without technology, without your phone, and you're going to
yeah,
close your eyes, the only thing you're going to be with is your physical body and your mind. And it's
yeah,
it's going to be difficult. It's if you've never done it before,
yeah,
you're not going to be excited about every thought and everything that's going on in your mind. Most people are not
yeah,
comfortable with what they're wearing or how they're being perceived. And then
yeah,
it's
yeah,
all of a sudden you're sitting with your mind and you're like, oh my God, I'm actually thinking that. And that's a humbling process. So
yeah,
uh, it does teach humility. And I know for myself that so we like to camp.
Mm.
We like to we have a travel trailer. We go up in the woods, and I notice exactly as soon as I get in that space, it's like the difference between being at your home and doing nothing and being out in like the woods and stuff is
Yeah.
there's no chores, there's no catching up on like
Yeah.
laundry and cleaning. And something like magical starts to happen for me as I start to get really creative. Because it's almost like this forced immersion of less distraction. So even though it's not in itself meditation, I always find myself getting really connected to creative thoughts, to thoughts that are coming from my higher self that are like driving things forward, helping me be. And I'm starting to find that that just happens by getting myself in that environment. So, if you don't give yourself any space from a day
Yeah.
to day, it's really hard to like just take a look at what are the thoughts you're even having. And that's what meditation will do. It'll help you look at them, redirect them, understand them, um, and really make sense of what's going on up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And let go of, and when we talk about those negative voices, or the voices that steer us off track, and they may be external too. Like I have a family member that there was, when things were, when I had to make a big life change. This
Mhm.
person had a really, kind of negative perspective, and over time, I started to recognize a pattern. It was like, oh, if they told me not to do this thing, maybe I really have to consider doing it. Because it was almost like they were an externalization of this negative voice, and that was easier to recognize.
Yeah.
And
Dude.
and then it was like I should probably do the opposite if they're telling me, to do this or not do this. But we we need to have that inner quiet and inner stillness.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're just never going to be able to recognize those things.
Yeah. You know what's fun? I was a funny sidebar story on what you just said is yeah, I don't know if my mother-in-law will ever listen to the show, and she is fantastic, fantastic. But um she does this in a really positive way. So I want to say this, but it's say like you're really confident about something. You're like, I'm gonna slay this. This is gonna be
Yeah.
awesome. It's gonna go really well. She's gonna be like, yeah, Bill, and you know, have you considered this and that and the other? And it's like, I just don't want to like, I don't
Yeah.
want to consider those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I discovered this through watching how my wife would react to it. And I was like, Lauren, if you act like you can't do something, she's gonna like be your biggest cheerleader. And then she's gonna like totally support you. And she's
Oh,
like,
interesting.
yeah, just be like, yeah, I'm gonna attempt like I'm gonna try to run this half marathon.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do it. It's gonna be a lot of work and it's kind of long and stuff. Be like, you can do it. You always accomplish the things you do. And it's like with clockwork.
Amazing.
It's really good. So you can kind of like, know how to get support. But that's like what we want to hear, right? That's like
Yeah.
but we most of the time reinforce each other through that
Yeah.
negative ego. Like, because we're just
Yeah.
so used to it. It's like, oh, life is hard today. The kids, they didn't get any sleep and neither did
Yeah.
I. And, nobody's like, and you're capable, man. You've had remember how you partied all night and
Yeah.
still got up and aced your test in college?
Yeah.
Like you got this.
Yeah.
We don't
And
do that as often. We will do
yeah.
it, but it's very often we just like wallow and join
Yeah.
in. So
I think that really is the default too when we look at the average person's existence in the world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of unnecessary suffering, and I think people just let those voices be a little bit too, or not a little bit, a lot bit too real, and
yeah,
take those listen to those negative things with too much weight, and
yeah,
uh, not consider that, just because you hear a voice or you have a feeling, it doesn't mean it's valid. Like I
right.
had, yeah, I like to share this story sometimes. I had a client come to me who, for energy healing, and they wanted to connect because they wanted me to somebody who could basically talk to maybe energies that like, were around their house, and see if they should like sell the house or not, land spirits, or something of that sort.
Mhm.
And that's not something that I typically do. But this person came in for a session, and I was like, you know why do you care so much about what they want? Like, what do you want? It's your house. Like if I'm getting dressed for the day, I don't like call up like a random person and be like, well, what should I wear? It's like, what do I want to wear?
Yeah.
We don't
Wow.
need to offload these decisions to whatever voice, whatever feeling. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want? What's going to be good for you?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like people like don't think that way.
Right.
They like forget they're the ones in control of their and ownership of onus of their own being.
Yeah. That's probably the best thing we can do for each other, right? Because
Yeah,
it gets people thinking about what do they even like, or why could it be occurring? And
yeah,
my team knows I'm notorious for answering things like that. They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I did this thing to myself and I'm feeling this way. Why do you think I feel this way?" And I was like, "Why do you think you feel that way?"
yeah.
Like, now they kinda come to know, and they're like, "I know you're gonna be like, 'What? Why do I think I'm this way?'" And I'm like, "Yeah, so why do
Yes,
you? Like, why do
yeah,
you think this is happening?" Or, it's a good place to be, like, 'cause we try to be each other's gurus, and we're here to help each other without
yeah,
a doubt. I never thought the idea of, like, you have to do life on your own is, like, a healthy place to live
yeah,
from. Like, we're
yeah,
meant to do this together, but
yeah,
even that reflection is really helpful. I know, um, I think I've even used our guide or called you or been like, "I'm kinda going through this, and, I'm looking at, like,
yeah,
well, what do you think?" And it's like, "Why
yeah,
didn't I just say that to myself?"
yeah. But
But it's
we get caught in the loops, and it can be so
yeah.
helpful to have that outside voice or that inner voice that just kind of like
Ye
operates as a check to make us consider something differently, but we just don't want to let us get stuck from
yeah.
doing whatever, making whatever decision we need to make.
Well, and
And
yeah, it's like the most empowering thing, right? Because, and I'm sure
yeah,
you've seen this where clients almost want to turn you into a guru, right? Like
yeah,
cause they trust you and
yeah,
you've led them to a degree through their healing process. And if even we'll talk chiropractically, like you see
yeah,
somebody who's really getting well after they've tried many other different ways, and they
yeah,
start to trust you. And this is a balance point, and you're like, yeah, I knew I knew what I was going to do could have the potential to help you, and you're seeing that, but I don't know everything about you. And but it does help open the door for, like,
yeah,
I'm ready to explore nutrition, I'm ready to explore a movement program
mhm,
or exercise, and then we can nudge them into, like, find something that you like. These are some
yeah,
maybe parameters to look at, because I don't want to be responsible for that. Because when it starts to not work, then it's like you have to be the guru to, like, redirect them. And we want
yeah,
people. All healing is self healing, so we want people to start to really, explore and find
yeah,
out what works. How
yes,
many diets
yeah,
have you messed around with at this point in your life? How many, sleep cycles have you tried? How many fasting
yeah,
routines? We've tried many different things, and I wasn't looking for one to fix everything, but I wanted to see what it would be like, so I could lead
yeah,
myself, and then
yeah.
maybe get some information to another person.
Absolutely. One of the things that helps me with this dynamic sometimes, if I'm like trying to figure something out, is my dreams too. Like it's
Mm,
like I'll have
good.
my dreams tend to be very vivid, and they have a lot of meaning for me, and it brings me probably the most guidance of anything in my life. Actually,
Oh,
is
cool.
uh, if it's not the most, it's really up there. Where it's like
Okay.
I'm remembering those dreams and how I felt, and then
Mhm.
oftentimes it's like I'll be analyzing a dream for like 2 or 3 days if it's like a really vivid one.
Yeah.
And it's like so much big things in my life have been like maybe there's times where I felt like I was supposed to be really stressed about something, and in the
Yeah.
dream it's like this piece, it's like it's all going to work out, it's okay. And then my waking mind like remembers it's like uh, I just how I felt, the certainty that came through the dream. Is
Yeah.
okay. I don't actually have to worry about this. That I can let it go.
That's a great point. You always forget, like, I don't have as many vivid dream I have been recently, but I don't have as often, like, where I'm really, like, but the thing I always love, like, when you figured out your dreaming and
Yeah,
it, then you can, like, practice because you're in
yeah,
a dream, right? So it
yeah,
does give a little level of, like, holding your thoughts at bay and, like, going against the voices and into it and just seeing what happens,
yeah,
because, um it can be a really helpful way to learn, and I know there's people that can consciously work towards doing that more frequently. And maybe you're one of them. It's like not practice, but I always like think it's cool when you can practice something in a dream to like get better at it in real life. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I think dreams can be so, like, hugely, so hugely valuable. We should do a whole episode on dreams, I think, actually, and, like, maybe we
yeah,
could interview somebody, and that would be a fun interview too.
it
Uh,
would be.
but, yeah, it's like those dreams can illuminate our waking life. They can be like one of those voices that we ping things off.
Hmm.
Um, to switch gears slightly here, I think one of the things where those voices are these, like, if you will, they're at like a heightened point, when these voices are at a heightened point, and often it's both the positive and negative are tend to be like heightened at the same time, if you will.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's these points where we need to make a decision about something. It's
Yeah,
almost
it's
like
great.
there's a fork in the road, and then everything is like it becomes louder.
Hmm. Yeah, and when you're saying that, it often when you do make the decision, what immediately happens after?
Yeah, just like peace and
Yeah.
clarity.
Yeah,
Right?
it silences a lot of it, and that's even the chatter, like, before a big race or a competition or a test or we tend to have, like, all that mental activity, and, like, when we get into it, it goes
Yeah,
away. When we decide to just move forward and, I think that's I've been a person that's experienced lots of fear in my life, but I haven't been a person that shies away from it, especially,
yeah,
like, years down the line, because there is even, I think Mel Robbins, if you've like her work and the 5-second rule and stuff, it kind
mm,
of, are you familiar with her work?
yeah,
Or,
mm,
it really kind of starves anxiety by making decisions and taking action. And when you're taking action, you're getting out of your head and you're just getting into like the work,
yeah,
into the doing. And it definitely helps people get out of anxiety. Is like, we even say stuff in culture like get out of your head, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
get
yeah,
out of
yeah,
your head. Well, what do we mean by that when we say that to somebody? Well, we mean get into somewhere else. Probably a
yeah,
good start to your heart, right?
yeah,
Another one's your body. Like when you're just in your mind, the mind is so distracting. It tells us we're not good enough, we're crappy, we're
yeah,
not worthy, we can't do it, we can't overcome it. Um, but like when we go somewhere else, we start to like have a different experience of ourselves. Um, which is
absolutely.
really, a much better place to be. And I think
Yeah,
that's why chiropractic, maybe, why chiropractic's so powerful. Like, people have a lot of thoughts surrounding why they're well and why they're not. And like a chiropractic adjustment brings them like into their body, into their physical
absolutely.
being, like very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
And it helps them have an experience. And I'm sure people who are listening or have had that where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a day. And then bam, it's like,
yeah,
what's going on? And they're like in their body in a different way, and they can experience the world not so much from just their thoughts and their mind.
yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that's interesting with this conversation too is how this can be related to mental illness. Like we talked about, anxiety. We also talk about depression. This like, oh,
Yeah.
it'll never get better. Things are hopeless. The voice can maybe have say different things or have kind of a different tone. But there's such huge levels of mental illness right now. People are suffering a lot, and you don't have to be a victim to everything that's going on with your head. Like it's not all real.
Yeah.
It's not, right. It's like it's not. That's one of the benefits of coming into your body and coming into your heart more. It's like you're more connected to this physical reality instead of
Yeah.
this alternate reality or weird illusion that maybe you're creating.
Yeah, and I think that's like when people are like the world is a mess. It's really scary. It's like, oh, it's all going to crap. And you're
Yeah,
like, well, like in this moment, like right now in your life, like I'm sitting in a great house. I'm having a
yeah,
great conversation with like I'm kind of living in world peace right now. Like
yeah,
it's not that bad. And that's like the more I think I've heard anxiety and depression described in a very simple way. It's like, and I this always resonated with me is like if you're anxious, you're in the future. You're
mm,
worried about the future, and if you're kind of depressed, you're like wallowing and stuck in
Yeah.
reliving the past to some degree. That's an oversimplification, but it's kind of true, because then when we look here and you're like, I don't think the world can achieve world peace. I don't think we can be a more peaceful society. And it's like, well, right now in this moment, are you peaceful? Are you feeling safe? Are you feeling
Yeah.
connected? And if you can have all those things in a moment, you can, like, most of the day is kind of great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, most of the day is kinda great. Before I got on this call, I was playing with my daughter. She was showing me gymnastic moves. I was petting my dog. I had a dinner. That way, like, most of our day is, like, pretty okay. But it's
Yeah.
usually our just thoughts in our voices in our head that kinda keeps us from, like, being connected with how much is actually really good. And
Yeah,
that's a shame.
absolutely. And when we think about, like, the best moments of our life, if you go back, it's like, it all ends up being those moments where we're present.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the best days, the best days you ever had. So it's those moments when you're present with
Mhm.
your friends and loved ones or whatever. And it's like those voices are actually probably very minimal during that time because you're present, you're in your body, you're here,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be so bad even with the clients where you see, um, they're getting better, like they're really
Yeah.
getting better. And what is like one of the most common things they say when they're starting to get well? Well, this all could turn around and not be this good. And it's like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
What? W- Okay, like, but
Yeah.
we're giving way too much
Yeah.
attention to that. And I think a healing journey, the main reason we wanted to talk about this is, like, a healing journey involves so much of this.
Yeah.
And the person that you're working with, they need to understand what that is. Like, they
Yeah.
need to have a recognition of, like, what somebody goes through a healing process, because and I think the reason we can even speak on this is because we're always doing this. I would argue, like, we're
Yeah.
always looking at our state of mind and how it's affecting our healing, our progression,
Yeah.
our growth, and that's why it's important. And I think it's probably one of the most important things right now for people, because um, it's holding people back. It's keeping them
Yeah.
small. It's causing anxiety. It's causing depression. It's like the root of a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like we don't have to you just shared something where it was like that the person saying it's like they're like, oh, like, they're starting to feel better, and it's like, oh, but this could, maybe I won't get all the way better. And it's like
Yeah.
that's just an externalization of that inner voice. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to give that inner voice any credence, any
That's
value. Like, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's like mosquito. Like, oh, you don't have to listen to it or pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Just slap it and go on with
Yeah.
your day.
That's good. And I think we're probably having this conversation over and over again to like kind of reinforce it in our own life. And I know,
Yeah.
like, when we teach Empower Thyself, which is a 2-day workshop, where we give people tools of empowerment, plus an initiation that helps them really get in touch with who they are, is this is one of the main focuses, is to help people, like, start to understand what
Yeah.
is the negative ego, what is the true self, like how to bring the truth self forward, how to put the negative ego down, and to move forward,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
a constant interrelationship along the path of knowing yourself. So it never
Yeah.
loses its importance in anyone's really daily life or progression. So you'll probably see essence of this already in our previous episodes and in going forward. Um, but to wrap it up, what do you feel like is the if somebody were to listen to this and be like, all right, well, where do I get started on kind of understanding the voices in my head? What would your recommendations be?
The first thing I would say is, like, it's a hugely impactful part of our experience of being a human being.
Hmm.
Is what's going on within these voices in our head. And then the next one is simply like meditation is probably the best tool that exists to help you with this.
Yeah.
So it's not so much of a struggle. And we can talk about mental health too. I mean, we kind of already have, but meditation, prayer, helping with. There's so much research as far as that and anxiety or depression.
Yeah.
And then my own personal methodology is just with these different voices in my head. When I'm aware of them, I'm always just cross-referencing it with how it makes my body feel. How does it make my
Yeah.
heart feel? Does it make me feel more light and at peace or not? And then that navigates to which, that helps me know which direction is my north, if you will.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm just going to give a big ditto on that one. But in addition, I'm going to add, like coming down the line, we're going to be putting together some programs for,
Yes.
teaching people how to meditate. We're going to have some in-person workshops on how to utilize some of the tools that we've been describing. We have networks of healers and people to connect people to. If you're looking for a local meditation group in your area, you know, d- don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll have our contact information in the show notes so you can send it to us and we can hopefully get you connected with somebody that can help you go deeper with any of these practices. So we
Yeah.
thank you again for being a part of Beyond the Practice, exploring the voices in our heads to share them with you today. So we look forward to speaking with you more. Keep following us and share, like, and rate and review if you don't mind.
Yes, and please like and subscribe. We are so grateful to spend this time with you, and we'll talk to you soon.